So we are on chapter 2, section 3 now, and we're going to be talking about now percent analysis, which we were doing before, but we're going to be talking about proportions now. So that's a definition of a proportion here. So it says, you know how to find percent analysis by setting up a ratio. We did that already. You also know that the amount of sales is the base, and the amount of sales is always the base, and the assigned value is always 100%. So we already learned that in the last section. We can use these two facts to find percent analysis using a proportion now. It's another way of doing this. So now we have to find out what is a proportion. A proportion is two equivalent ratios joined by an equal sign. A proportion has four terms. So you have 4/5 equal 8/10, right? And so you basically have, two. Proportion is two equivalent. They have to be equivalent. 4/5 is always equivalent to 8/10. You know that. So two of these equivalents, and now these two would be the means, and these are the extremes. You know this already, probably from algebra. Now you can always, as writing is as 4/5 and 8/10, you can write it. See how they wrote it here? 4/5 and 8/10, and these are going to be the extremes, and these are going to be the means. It's the same thing. This is just rewritten over here. So by using cross multiplication, the product of the means should also equal the product of the extremes if you have a true proportion. To find the missing term in a proportion, use cross multiplication and the algebra. So this is algebra. I always love doing these. So you can basically, if you had an x number here, you could times this, times the extremes by the means, and they always have to be equal, right? So that's why we can solve for x. So let's show how to do this here. So now we have x, right? X is just basically you're solving to find out what x is. So 5/8 equal x over 12. So you're going to multiply the means and write the left number of the problem, multiply the extremes and write it into algebra. Anyway, you can read this over. Here's how we do it. It's right over here. So we have 8x, because we're multiplying 8x. Here's 8x. This is going to be the means, and this is the extremes. 8x equal 5 times 12, which is 60. So 8x equals 60. So now we can find for x, right? So how do we find for x? Do you remember? We're going to just divide both sides by 8 to get rid of the 8, and then we'll find 60 over 8. It's going to be, so x is 7.5. Very easy algebra problem. So anyway, just finding that x, you're going to times this, and this is going to equal this, extremes, and then you put the x there, and then you solve algebra for x. So 8x equals 60, you're going to divide both sides by 8. Now, so you see, this is just another way. We did it in the last by just finding ratios, and now we're going to do it by using this it's called cross multiplication. So this is fun to do if you have any problem to do this with. So that's a very easy way of doing it. So here's the things here. It says, remember, the same number may be added to both sides in an algebra problem. If you add the same number up to both sides, it's still going to be equal. You're going to subtract the same number from both sides, and it'll be equal. Or if you multiply the number by both sides, it's going to be equal. Or if you divide the number by both sides, it's going to be equal. So these are just rules, and we already knew this from before, don't we? So here's the solve for x. So we have cross multiplication again. We're going to have the ways and the means, the extremes and the means. So we have 3 over x, because we want to find this x at the bottom. So we're going to do 3 times 15 and 7x. So 7x equal 3 times 15 is 45. So now we're just going to divide. We're going to get rid of that 7 to find x. We're going to divide the 7 out, cross out that 7. And so we'll have 45 divided by 7. So x is going to equal 6.4. You can do it on your calculator if you want, 6.4. So this is just cross multiplication. So far, it's been pretty easy dealing with percent, because you should know most of the stuff that we've been dealing with. So these are these exercise problems. Let's see if I did any of these for you, probably. here we go. So here we have the nearest tenth. So we have the extremes and means. So we have 9x right here. 9x equals 5 times 12. I put that dot there, means times. 5 times 12 is 60. 9x equals 60. Then x equals 60 divided by 9, which I did here. And I got 6.6. So actually I got 6.6 something, but it ends up 6.7 when you round it to the next number. So 6.7 would be the number of that. X is going to equal 6.7. Number 3, we have 11 twelfths equal 3 over x again. 12 times 3 and 11x. So we have 11x equal 12 times 3. 11x equal 36. This is 12 times 3. I shouldn't have put a dot there because you might think it's a decimal point, but it's not. It means 12 times 3 equals 36. And so now we have x equal 36 over 11, because we're going to divide 11. 11 goes into 36, 3.27, which rounds to 3.3. These are pretty easy. Number 5, we have 3 over x equal 11 over 19. I'm going to find x. X times 11, 11x equal, and then 19 times 3 is 57. And so we have 11 goes into 57, 5.18, and then we're going to the nearest tenth would be 5.2. Always just put your work there too. Number 7, 21 over x equal 7x. That's how we do it. Be 7x equal 21 times 10, which was 7x. This is an easy one. 7x equal 210. Then you're going to divide this side by each side by x. So x equal 210 divided by 7, which is going to equal x equal 3. 7 goes 3 times 7 is 21. So x equals to the nearest. They went to the nearest tenth, so you need to add that 0.0 at the end. Even though it's 30, add that 0.0 to the nearest tenth. So these are pretty easy. Okay, I'm getting low power here, so I'm going to have to stop, I think. But let's get going. Let's finish, see if we can get ratio problems. Ratio problems can be worked by writing a true proportion and then solving for x. So setting up a proportion is easier if you follow these statements. So both antecedents in the proportion must name like quantities. So they have to be like quantities. Both consequence and the proportion must be like quantities. That means they have to be equal to each other. The proportion may be checked to see if it has been solved correctly by, you can check it later on, check the, so this is just what we were talking about before. 3 out of every 20 pounds of apples in Stein's fruit market spoiled. If Mr. Stein had a total of 2,450 pounds of apples to the nearest whole pound, how many apples spoiled? So we have to set up, proportion. Represent the spoiled apples using the antecedent. Represent the total apples using the consequent, solve. So we have, 3 out of what? So 3 out of 20. There's a 3 number. 3 out of 20. So we have 3/20th. And then we want to know how many apples of the 250 pounds spoiled. So we have x over 2,500. See how we did that? This is actually pretty fun to do. Because now we can, now we can do the cross multiplication. Even if you have your calculator, you can do it. 3 times, we don't even need a calculator, 3 times 2,450 here. And so we have this 2, and that equals 7,350 when your time multiplies. And this is 20x. Then you're going to divide that number by 20. And you're going to get 368 pounds. And so you can actually check that too. 368 pounds out of 2,500 means 3 out of every 2 is the percent, So this is a good one. You should know how to do these. These are not so hard. And again, here's setting up your examples of setting up. We'll just look over this real quick. Let me see. We'll just look at these real quick because I think you're going to know how to do these, and then we'll do the quiz. So Baker Shoes employs 15 employees. 2 out of 3 are full-time workers. How many part-time workers? Well, if it's 2 out of 3 full-time, then you know that 1/3 are part-time. So 1/3 equals, and then x over 15. Do cross multiplication, you'll get 5. This is easy. If 3 inches represent 140, so 3 to 140, how many inches are needed? And so x equals 375. Do cross multiplication here. This times this divided by this is going to equal 8. So anyway, that's how you do those. So I don't think you'll have any problems doing those. We'll do them together. So hopefully my battery's not going to go out on you here. So the camp store had sales of, so this is under, we're doing this sales here. So the camp store had sales of 1 month of $41,000. Their gross profit for the month was $18,000. Do a percent analysis using the proportion method. So remember that sales is going to be assigned 100%. So you're going to know that that's going to be 41,000 over 100 to a percent. So now we have your money, 18,000 to X. The gross profit of the month, do a percent to X equal 41,000 over 100. It's 100%. So now you're going to times this out. You're going to multiply this times this. You get 1,800,000 if you do that. And you have 41X. Of course, you get rid of all those zeros here. And you'll have 41X equal 1,800. And then you'll divide each by 41. You'll get 44%. The only difference here is to do a percent. You always remember the sales is always going to be in this. If we're doing percent analysis, the sales is always going to be whatever the sales number divided by 100, because you want to keep it in percent. If it wasn't in percent, we wouldn't have to do that, because we're talking about percent, so, and that's how we'll have to do some problems like that in the next to show you how to do these. But so, I'm going to have to probably stop here. But if you look here, you can see how they did for the grocery store. The sales are going to be the bottom. Remember, this is going to be over 100%. The sales is always going to be that proportion. So we will do, but this one is finding each one over sales like we did before, only they're going to use the percent. There's 2 methods of doing it, so to find the percent. So I hope we understood that. So I don't know if I did any of these. Let's see if I did any of these here. Nick's Grocery. I guess I did. Okay, here's how I did these percents. Yeah, looks like. Anyway, so operating expenses, each one. See how I did here? You can look right here. Cost of goods, 14,000 over X equal 35,000 over 100. 35,000 is always, so that's how I calculate that out. And then you calculate this out over here, and and we end up getting 40% or whatever. Yeah. So the same way. See how I did here? The operating expenses is 7,500, and then that's over X, and 35,000 is the sales, and then you just calculate to find the X there. And then the same thing you're going to do for the net, each one, calculating it out. So each one of these is calculating it out into that 35,000 over 100 equals 14,000 over X. So, and then using your cross multiplication for those. So. Okay, that's it for this part, for section 3. So we'll do some review, and actually we'll do the quiz next section.